Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Effective Line Managers Toolkit workshop. Today, we are going to be addressing a couple of very important leadership questions. We're going to be looking at what leadership is. We're going to be looking at why it is important. And we're going to be looking at what is required to lead effectively in an organization and how you can develop effective leadership in the workplace. My name is Idoku Godwin Ogala, and I am the speaker for today's session. This webinar is critical to leadership development, and it's the first of several webinars or learning sessions we'll be having as we aim to develop our leadership so that we can effectively influence and impact in our various work environments. Now, why is it important? Why is leadership important? And why is it essential that we have a webinar like this? John Maxwell said that the better you lead, the more successful you will become. And how you lead will determine how much you succeed. He said, the better you lead, the better the organization you will build, and the more results you will achieve. And so your leadership lead determines the limit of your success. And the best leaders will build the best businesses. So in other words, there is a clear correlation between leadership excellence and performance excellence. Jim Collins also, in his book, spoke to the fact that at the heart of every business success or averted business crisis, there is a leader. Research has shown that the difference between great organizations and others is the quality of the leadership available at different levels of the organization. And it's a known fact that the difference between great individuals and other average or unsuccessful individuals is the development of their leadership. So when you think of leadership and the benefit it has, you think of it in two dimensions. One is to the individual, and secondly, it is to the organization in which they belong. As an individual, you cannot exceed or succeed beyond the level of your leadership development. And Jim Collins' book, The Good to Great, companies or organizations. The singular and most important factor, and the first factor he spoke to was level 5 type of leader. And he said that was the first key to making organizations make the journey from a good to a great company. So either as an individual or as an organization, you need leaders. And that is why the subject of leadership and the development of leadership is critical. And if you look around our nations today, you would also agree with me that it takes exceptional leadership to lead great nations. And so beyond, we said earlier that to look at that is in two dimensions, but now you begin to even think of it in three dimensions. That at an individual level, at an organizational level, and at a national level, or at a global level, leadership is at the heart of development. Leadership is at the heart of success. Leadership is at the heart of effectiveness. And so leadership is an attribute we all want to build and all want to develop. And the question of are leaders born, are leaders made has always been out there. And through several debates, it's been concluded that, of course, a lot of leaders, by reason of certain traits and characteristics and behavior, are taught or are seen to be born. However, when it became clear that leadership is just a collection of behaviors and attributes that can actually be learned and replicated, then it became clear that everyone has a chance and a shot at leadership. So we can say that leaders are not only born, but they can also be made. And so every one of us has a shot at leadership. And I remember John Maxwell's 360 degrees leader, where he emphasized the fact that you can actually lead from whichever part of the organization you're in, whether you are below the organization, in the middle, or at the top. Because leadership requires that you do not only lead below, but you also influence and lead your peers. And of course, influence and lead your leaders or your superiors. And so if you think of leadership that way, you can say that leadership, apart from the fact that it can be developed, is something that you need in order to succeed 360 degrees. So it's important that we learn leadership. And these great authors and authorities in leadership have, through their many works, pointed to us or helped us to see that leadership is key. Leadership is a multi-dimensional concept that also comes across to the person that is being led as an influence. And so you can say that in leadership, you have relationships, you have interactions, and then of course the output, which is what? Which is influence. So what that means is that before there can be leadership, there must definitely be a relationship between one person and another. And that's why it's been widely said that if you think you are leading and there is no one following, then you are just taking a walk. So in leadership, the first critical element for leadership to exist is relationship. There must be a relationship. And now in that relationship, the second critical dimension of leadership is the fact that there must be an interaction. Okay, so between the leader and the led, there must be some form of interaction. And there's a theory called the LMT theory. We'll look at that later. That speaks about the critical elements of that interaction. And then the third thing, of course, is the effect of that interaction on the person or the individual being led. And that's what we call the influence. So John Maxwell was right to have said that leadership is influence, but that is only speaking to the outcome of leadership. For you to have the outcome, you must have these necessary conditions, which is a relationship and then an interaction. And it's in breaking down those three critical elements that we'll begin to find out the factors that enables one individual to wield influence over others. And so it's important that those elements are studied. And so many research has been carried out around the subject of relationships and, of course, around the dimension of interaction. And a lot of it are in a lot of our learning programs. And so we're looking at why is leadership important. So we said that leadership is important because of three critical reasons, or if to see the importance of leadership, you can look at it from key dimensions. One is at the individual level, the second is at the organizational level, and the third is at maybe a global level or a national level. Say to people that the system of life is divided into 5 layers. We call them the levels or circles of care. And we say there is the family, the circle, the level of the family. And we say there is the level of the community. And then we say there is the level of the company. And then we say there's the level of the nation. And then, of course, the globe. So there are levels of care, But interestingly, every level of care has leaders that make sure things happen. So for the home, at the level of care, which is the primary level of care, you have the man, the wife, that form the leaders at that level. And then at the community level, and in the community, of course, you have various elements. So you could have the church community, you could have the community's leadership. So if you live in an estate, for example, you probably have the chairman of the estate. So it is leadership at that level, and everything. And the essence of leaders at every level is to provide and to protect. All right. And then if you go on and then of course you also have the church community within that level, and then you have the pastors and the clergies and the imams and all the other forms of leaders that help to provide and to protect at those levels. And then if you go higher to the national level or the country level, let's call it the country level, you have the local government, and then you have the state, and then you have the nation. So you have the local government chairman, and you have the state governors, and then you have the president. So leaders at those various levels, and various type of leaders leading sub-sectors or sections of those at that level or at that layer or circle of care. And then if you go higher to the globe, at the global level, you also have the World Health Organization, the United Nations, and we have people organized in such a way that can also provide care at that level. So we find out that leadership is essential at every level of care. And of course, if you come to the organization too, that's one level of care, but the third level of care. You have things organized in such a way that you also have the CEO, the MDs, and on top of the CEO and the MDs, you also have the board of directors. And so that leaders also at every level keep things structured and organized so that there's effectiveness and there is impact. So you find that there's leadership at every level of care in society. And that's what makes our world go round. But I was saying, why is it important that we understand leadership? At an individual level, you as an individual, first of all, need to lead yourself. We say there are three types of leadership: personal leadership, private leadership, and then public leadership. So first of all is for you to have mastery of yourself and lead yourself effectively, which is key for personal success. And beyond that is then the need for you to be able to lead the circle of care in which you belong. So if you are a father, if you are a mother, if you are an MD, if you are the CEO, if you are a manager, that's in a company, or you are the president of a country. So you find out that, again, you need leadership. Beyond leading yourself effectively and having personal success, you then need leadership to lead your circle of care, because every human being would eventually have to lead a particular circle of care at every point in time. So growing up as a child, you are under a circle of care, and then you are a follower. But then the moment you move out of your developmental years, which is the years between 0 and 20 years, and you begin to move into your productive years, with the years between 25 to 40, you begin to assume leadership, both at different levels of care. So whether it's at a family level where you get married and you begin to assume leadership of an individual, and then you have children and you begin to assume leadership of them, or you begin to work in an organization and then you begin to grow in the ranks, and then you begin to assume leadership, team leadership, and all of that. So leadership is a critical skill for survival and also for contributing to society. Leadership should actually be treated like oxygen. It should not be an optional thing. However, you follow eventually to lead. All right. Growth, the sign that you're growing is that you begin to assume leadership responsibilities over others and you begin to contribute effectively to the various circles of care or the levels of care in society. So leadership is important at three levels. One, at an individual level. Secondly, at the company business level. And the third is the organizational level. And that's what John Maxwell was saying to us earlier. And that's what Jim Collins also said. What should then be our response to these things? If leadership is okay, then we all must learn to lead. We all must understand what leadership is, and we must all learn to lead. All right, so my own leadership story began like 20 years ago when I had the opportunity to first work with people. I began to try to be conscious of my leadership competencies and learn even more. So when I got into my first place of work was MTN. First of all, to be aware of what I had, what were my strengths in leadership, the natural competencies and traits that I had as a leader. And then I had to learn from the leaders that were around me, the things they were doing that stood them out and made them qualified to move up the rank. Many people have stopped their leadership development because they failed. And so they got stuck and they just built a fence around themselves and stopped there. They probably even failed and were thrown out of one organization and they never tried again. All right. And they just stopped growing. Now, that should not be your story. Your story should not end like that because you failed or there was a mistake or there was a slip. I remember working in a particular place, and one of our supervisors, in addressing a staff, was infuriated by the staff, and she was provoked and slapped the staff. And so, of course, it was a great place to work, with police and everything. And of course, naturally, she was let go. Now, that type of experience is enough to destroy someone on a leadership journey. But the appropriate response to something like that is to go back and reflect and relearn and understand yourself and know why you responded the way you did, and give it a try again. And you might also say, okay, so where would you have the opportunity? Would another company hire you for slapping somebody else? Yeah, and there are two responses to that. Number one is that maybe we need to begin to rethink the way we run organizations, all right, and the way HR thinks about people. Past behavior is not always equal to future behavior, but HR assumption has always been, and I'm HR, so I understand. We use this to hire people, we use this to evaluate people's performance. We say past performance is a predictor of future performance, all right, or future behavior. But if you stretch that too far, then there will not be hope for anybody. And so prisoners cannot come out and become presidents. And we've seen a lot of people come out of prison and become presidents. You can't label people because of a behavioral derail. They are human beings. They only acted to the best of their ability under that circumstance. And the thing about leadership is that leadership, like we'll see later, is always a response to a current situation. And the excellence of leadership is the ability to become so flexible and become what we call a situational leader. I tell all this to say, I'd made my own mistakes because of growing with individuals, with business situations and everything. But every time I learned and I got better. But at the same time, I have also had some fantastic milestones. Some of the pictures you see up there, if you start from the right backwards to the left, it's actually the series of recognition and award that I got leading people, all right, in a structured organization. And like I said, leading people in a structured organization is different from leading people in the public service, it's different from leading people in the home, it's different from leading people in the church, it's different from leading people, in a community, gathering. Leadership must be adapted to the situation around. Very, very, very important point. If you live here with that, in my own career leadership development, I had a lot of successes. I have nothing but very beautiful memories of my past, providing leadership for people. Now, again, having said that, did everybody I meet along the way clap their hands? Of course not. I remember the first time I was given an opportunity to lead. There were about 4 of us who were in the same team, and the organization needed to choose a team lead. And so we all went for tests and interviews. And of course, there were other people in the team who were more competent, who were more technically competent than I was. And that was one of my first and early lessons in leadership. In our particular case, our leaders were looking at those things. And I was found to be a balance of all three, right? Which is technical, social, and strategic skills. But the other guys were either skewed to one side or the other. And so at the end of the day, I was picked to lead the team. And the first leadership crisis or challenge I ever had came from those I competed for that position with. There were a number of escalations. And at the end of the day, management had to decide to move some of them out of my team so that I can lead effectively. And that's why in many organizations like GE and all of that, when they have people in the leadership pipeline and they compete for the CEO position, the moment one person gets the CEO position, they ask the other guys to turn in their resignation because they know they need to clear the space for the other person to work. And of course, those guys leave and move on to other organizations and do great things. In some cases, they tender their resignation. In other cases, they are asked to do that. Not because he did anything wrong, but because they are human beings, and that's how life works, and that's how you should be. And then of course, along the line, leading to the first award I got here, that leading that team was what secured me my first award, which is the one you see with my CEO, standing by my side. This was in Ghana, and the team members got together and nominated me for that award because they thought this guy is fantastic, and it came with a lot of prize money and all of that, fantastic experience, travel, and everything, and lot of beautiful things, I tell you. In leadership, you will not expect everybody to like your style. And there is a reason for that also, which is also in the personality styles and types that we have and all of that. So certain leaders lead certain people well. But there are certain people that you cannot leading in a particular style. And of course, at that level, I was still starting off, so my style would have been skewed, to, one particular personality type, which is more like the go-getter, result-getter type of leader, But then I had not learned enough of situational leadership where I could switch styles, and so I can carry more people along. I mean, so if you think back to America, Donald Trump was an excellent businessman, then comes into government and then loses a good part of Americans. Why? It's simple. It didn't mean that he was not good as a leader in the style. I mean, the style he was used to, he was good at it. But then when you begin to assume, when your leadership scope expands, you have, and especially at a national level, you are brought in different type of personalities. And so your ability to switch leadership styles becomes key to winning. But if you stick to one style, you will lose so many, and those people will not be your supporters. They will be your detractors. That can lead to a lot of problems on your leadership journey. And like I said, it doesn't mean you have failed. You just need to go back, reflect, rethink, relearn, and refire, and you'll find out that you will succeed with time. Right. So that's, I think that's all I can share from my leadership story. Eventually, I left being a manager in the same firm, went on to lead a consulting firm, and then eventually went on to start my own consulting firm. And even while working in my own consulting firm, I was seconded a number of times to also lead organizations, as HR director, in about 3 different organizations. And in each experience, in each of these stints, I still had to learn new things about leadership, because I led in different situations, and I led in organizations at different situations, and I led with organizations with different type of people. All these organizations come with their flavor, and you must adapt your leadership to them as you feel. I mean, like they say a lot today, you see topics in leadership training like leading in crisis. There is a leadership style for leading in crisis. There is a leadership style for leading in startups. There's a leadership style for leading in turnaround. There's a leadership style in leading a successful organization. All right. So you must learn and be conversant with these things. If you are going to, else if you make a transition, you will first struggle. In some cases derail. Some people actually so derail, they never recover. But we're saying here that should not be the case with you if you are going to embark on this journey, because you will fail, and please, it's okay. That's just the point I'm trying to make. Fail, learn, and try again.